Teaching students with different learning needs is incredibly rewarding. But when we rely on traditional, rigid lesson plans, children with learning disabilities often end up feeling isolated and left behind. To fix this, we have to rethink our approach. We will use the inclusive classroom framework. It is a structural solution necessary to overhaul these failing standard lesson plans. This framework relies on three main pillars: identifying hidden academic challenges, integrating targeted teaching tools, and building a supportive emotional environment. To see how this works, take a moment to pull up one of your standard everyday lesson plans. We are going to actively modify it as we go through this tutorial. Shifting from a static plan to a dynamic framework makes your teaching accessible. It ensures students with diverse needs can actually navigate the material successfully. This shift prioritizes student survival over teacher convenience. Step 1 is identifying the barriers. You need to start with an observation checklist. Keep this on hand while your students are working independently so you can track specific, recurring struggles. This diagram shows a side-by-side comparison of a standard reading path versus a dyslexic reading path. Dyslexia is a neurological condition causing difficulty in reading and language processing. On your checklist, watch for students who read very slowly, skip entire words, or consistently transpose letters in their spelling. You also need to watch for dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is a learning challenge that affects writing and fine motor skills. You will spot this through awkward pencil grips, poor spacing on the page, and a noticeable disconnect between how well a student speaks their ideas versus how they write them down. A common mistake is seeing a messy, incomplete worksheet and assuming the student is just being lazy or rushing through the work. These struggles are not deliberate behavioral choices. They are the results of neurological variations and how the brain functions and processes information. When you accurately identify these markers, you stop punishing a child for things they cannot control. Instead, you can provide targeted academic support, which leads us to the next step in the framework. Look at your standard lesson plan. If it requires 30 minutes of continuous seated listening, it will fail for students with overlapping attention difficulties like ADHD. This timeline shows a continuous 30-minute teaching block. The strategy here is differentiation. We take that standard block and split it into 3 10-minute segments. Now, in the empty spaces between those blocks, insert physical movement breaks to give students a moment to reset. Within each of those 10-minute chunks, you need to add a multi-sensory component. Provide visual aids, offer auditory instructions, or include a kinesthetic activity where they build or touch something. This exact pacing stops students from tuning out. Breaking the task down helps them follow step-by-step instructions without getting overwhelmed by a massive wall of information. Temporal structure and multi-sensory inputs stabilize the learning environment. They serve as cognitive anchors that help children with learning disabilities process and retain what you are teaching. The next step is integrating tools, but do not fall into the trap of tech overload. Start the framework by introducing just one new tool at a time. For reading assignments, your primary integration should be assistive technology, software designed to help students bypass specific learning barriers. Examples include text-to-speech tools or audiobooks. When activating a text-to-speech tool on a classroom device, the interface reads the text aloud while visually highlighting the current sentence on screen. Before you expect your students to use this independently, you have to model the software for them. Show them exactly how to press play, adjust the speed, and follow along. Once they know how to use it, students with processing difficulties can complete their assignments on their own. They no longer have to wait for a teacher to dictate the text to them. Targeted assistive tech shifts the students' cognitive energy. Instead of burning all their focus on the exhausting struggle of decoding words, they can direct that energy toward actually understanding the material. The final pillar is the emotional environment. A common mistake teachers make is exclusively praising final grades, the speed of completion, or the highest test scores. You need to implement effort-based praise. Make it a daily routine to acknowledge the hard work students put in to combat their learning barriers, regardless of their final score. This chart compares outcome praise with effort praise. Outcome praise sounds like, "Great job getting an A on this reading check." Effort praise sounds like, "I noticed you used your text-to-speech tool independently to get through that difficult chapter." Pair this verbal shift with a structured, tangible reward system. Give points or tokens for strategy use, rewarding the process rather than the final product. Over time, this specific type of environment builds resilience. It makes a student willing to tackle difficult tasks without immediately shutting down or withdrawing emotionally when they get frustrated. A continuous positive reinforcement loop acts as a protective emotional layer. It ensures that the structural and technological changes you made earlier in the framework actually succeed in practice. Look back at the standard lesson plan you pulled up earlier. By identifying hidden challenges, breaking down the timeline, adding assistive tech, and shifting your praise, you have tools they need to engage, rather than penalizing them for unseen barriers. Take this newly adapted framework and implement it in your classroom tomorrow morning. If you want to build on these skills and pursue a specialized career, look into formal certification programs like the special education courses offered by the AP Teacher Training Institute. True educational equity does not mean lowering academic standards. It means redesigning the instructional path required to reach them, so every student has a fair chance to arrive at the destination.